Just been doing a bit of research this morning by Google. I Googled some information on what is required to be an Australian senator. And because as a Tasmanian, I feel like Jackie Lambie is sending the wrong message to Australia about who Tasmanians are. Tasmanians don't run and hide from the truth. You know, we're constantly bombarded with all this misinformation about us having two heads and such, and about the fact that we have relations with our cousins. I have two female cousins in Tasmania, and I haven't had sex with either of them. And so this running from the truth, Jackie Lambie censorship campaign against Little Rocket Man, the second Little Rocket Man, is, I feel, bringing disrepute to the Tasmanian reputation. A bit like my kid's mum brought disrepute to my reputation. And these things are aligned because I believe the misuse of the judicial system, of the policing system, the weaponisation of laws designed to protect women who are in fact actually coming under violent attack by their partners, I feel like this is all connected. And I feel like, just like Jackie Lambie is sending the wrong message about who Tasmanians are, I feel like my children's mother is sending the wrong message about who I am and about how our laws should be appropriately used and how our policing system should be appropriately used. And this is leading to giganticism of all our public service industries, like police, like nursing, and like hospitals, that has led to this rollout of a potentially harmful experimental drug that they're all trying to hide and pretend didn't happen, and they're fucking really scared about it. Sorry about the swear. And so I'm going to have to clear all my name and run for a senatorship, and I've got to decide whether I want to be a senator in Tasmania or whether I want to be a senator in Western Australia. And I've got to sort out all these problems in order to even have a little go, because I have been, as a Tasmanian, dispossessed from my land and from my father's land. I've been dispossessed by my right to educate my children and to prepare them for a new digital world in which all the tools of censorship that the corrupt politicians have gotten very used to, the environment in which they became accustomed to, where they could pull strings and shut people up and do all this such thing, is all kind of catastrophically running into failure because of Elon Musk's example and his exposure of the back-end manipulation that these large platforms, all of them foreign-owned, have led to. Now, if I've got to get a couple of pamphlets and stick them up down at the IGA, the original Facebook, to make my point and to clear my name and run for senatorship, then I'll do that. But I believe I can use all the platforms, myself not being censored by any of them, to freely speak and to basically give Tasmania and Tasmanians a voice of a new age and not of this kind of superiority presentation displayed by Mrs. Lambie or Ms. Lambie. I'm not sure whether she's married or not, so I can't be sure which prefix to use before her name. But I will give a little bit of I will give a little bit of an analogy to another Lambie that I've had, and I don't know whether there's a relation there, but I would assume, based on this superiority thinking, that perhaps there is a family trait here. My mother's, one of my mother's many squeezers, a man by the name of, I think, J. Lambie of Chittering, apparently his superiority thinking led him to believe that because of his penetration of my mother, that this kind of entitled his son to some type of marital situation with my daughter, a person I don't think I've even met, Mr. Lambie of Chittering. And to hear this coming through my mother's mouth was quite shocking. This is almost like a colonizer superiority approach of organised marriage and betrothment that I think should have been left 100 years ago in the past. And the fact that they all bloody worked for NASA up at the bloody tracking station in Carnarvon and fooled around up there with all types of inappropriate behaviour and some type of superior infiltration of the Australian environment just leads me to believe that I think the lambies need to take a little bit of a reality check and realise that this isn't called Lambie land, is it? Neither here, neither Chittering or in Tasmania or the government or the internet is not called Lambie land. Yes, and then in combination with the fact that all the little baby lambs out here are going to be killed by the Labor Party and by the politicians in Canberra that are extending their superiority across the nation, leading to millions and millions of dead sheep and probably thousands and thousands of dead farmers suiciding themselves under the unrealistic examples set by Jesus Christ and the extreme promotion of that suicidal death cult by the Catholic Church in our regional areas, leaving these men to feel dispossessed to the point where they have to suicide themselves to appease their Lord and Master Jesus Christ as example. They have to look after sheep instead of diversifying their products and services and land use basis techniques. And also, in some extreme cases, leading them to actually participate in gender swapping, cross-dressing activity, just to kind of as the only appropriate avenue to compete against a world in which the daughters of colonial invaders, freed from the restraints of the masculine world, are imposing their will willy-nilly and using quite extreme measures onto the rest of the Australian people with this the superiority complex, I think, if only bolstered by the example of the attempt to completely colonise a very new and misunderstood environment of the internet. It's if we've got to go back old school, you know what I mean? And if I've got to be a little drummer boy in the little town square of every little town from here to Hobart, yeah, then I'll bloody well do that. And I'll use the internet. Because I'm a big girl. And, if people want to say something that I've done that's not good, that's truthful, I'm all for it. It's when people use these loopholes and these staggering weapons that have been provided by our incompetent judicial system willy-nilly to create absolute chaos and not provide any stability and actually prevent children being adequately educated and adequately prepared to combat the likes of Miss and Mr. Lambie and their superiority complex, their entitlement to treat our sons and daughters as handmaids, then I think, we've really got to ask ourselves who we are as Australians, who we are as West Australians, and who we are as Tasmanians. Something that I consider myself to be all of the above, plus the additional of considering myself as an Englishman. So I don't know what has happened to Tasmania since my father left there at 17, being dispossessed, I think, a little bit by his mother and her superiority and maybe her plate throwing and knife throwing and things like that. She was probably a very strong, beautiful woman, and it was a wartime era. So I do appreciate that. But that led to the alienation and to the only thing my father felt he could do was to escape the little island and explore the world, and then to only land up in Western Australia and have the same thing done to him by his spouse, I think was quite horrific. And it's this superiority and this elevation of female protection without the relevant responsibility. And this is a perfect storm to use women as almost like a Trojan horse to wheel out totalitarian examples, that are being attempted by the dark patriarchy of the socialist combined political class. The political class are running for the hills. They are trying to protect exposure of their misdeeds and exposure of their organised criminal-esque global conspiracy to enslave the masses using digital censorship under the guise of women's liberation. And my daughter is a woman. Yeah, she's not a bottle of wine at a liquor store, Mr. Lambie. Yeah, she doesn't want. She's not lured by the allure, as my mother was, of the left-hand passenger seat of yours or your son's MG. She doesn't care about the fact that you pretended that man landed on the moon or whatever the fuck you did up there in Carnarvon. And she has no interest in participating or continuing on in a pharmaceutical death cult that has tried to implant itself in the position of all the major religions of the world, including Catholicism, which, although may have assisted in its elevation, has now absolutely broken ties with the entire psychiatric and pharmaceutical industry, and is working tirelessly to end the scourge that these scrub-wearing, stethoscope-avoiding medical practitioners / used car salesmen are under the protection of a giganticized global hand-in-hand agreement and arrangement using Australian taxpayers' money to put these used car salesmen in every hospital, on every street corner, and of course, most horrifically of all, with the example, this is where Mrs. Lambie or Ms. Lambie is actually quite bang on, is that these practitioners, these salesmen of potions and pills and of doubt, these spreaders of seeds of doubt, they're cropping our children as if it was a field of Devonport loam on the internet, with all this promotion of mental disorders out of their little book. It's like the Bible, except they made it up, called the DSM, which is like it should be called the You're Not Right Bible. You're Not Right and We Can Fix It Bible by the psychiatric elites. And you'll know that they're a psychiatric elite because they'll have the largest house in the nicest area and they'll drive the nicest car. And that type of manipulation into the Australian people's minds is just not going to work anymore. And Mrs. Lambie is stuck in the dark ages, and she's getting a little bit upset that all the control and superiority that she craves and has gotten used to is disintegrating under her feet, a little bit like the Tasmanian Bridge that fell down all those years ago. And so I have some big decisions I need to make. I might need all the help I can get, and that might include some assistance from SpaceX and from Skylink and from Elon Musk and from the Trump administration in order to decide, first of all, whether I consider to be a senator in Tasmania or whether I consider to be a senator in my state of birth, the state I'm being forced out of by fierce aggression by a Labor cohort that has used horrific strategies to dispossess me of my rights as a naturally born citizen. That's a mouthful, isn't it? That's more of a mouthful than Jackie Lambie's teen years. And I just am sick of the discrimination and the bad examples. These are people that are put there to purposefully embarrass the Tasmanian people. And she, as far as I'm concerned, she's had far too long in the media out there making Tasmanians look stupid, making them look arrogant, and making them look ignorant, and making them look racist, and all types of things. And that's not the message that Tasmania should, in my opinion, be wanting to send to the world, whether it be on Channel 7, Channel 9, Channel 10, or whether it be on platforms such as X or Instagram or Facebook. This patsy wheeled out to weaken Tasmania needs to be stricken from the Senate. If Tasmania wishes to return its world reputation to symbols such as Errol Flynn or young Einstein or the little bit of footage of the Tasmanian tiger before it was extinct that my dad saw there. He actually saw that tiger in the zoo before it died. And I think that grainy little piece of footage inspired him to make a grainy piece of footage in which he practiced his golf swing, because he was probably of the opinion that, being a previous representative of Tasmania in the sport of hockey, and also being a representative of South Australia in the sport of hockey, I believe he felt hard done by that an extinct marsupial was getting all the showtime of this grainy footage being propped out all over the world, rather than his example of elevating a almost unknown sport all the way to the Olympics, in which a hockey ruse player in this last thing made cutting edge news side by side with ray gun over a controversy, showing he's being stripped publicly by the media. It shows the moral example that's expected by hockey players coming from Australia. He was completely ran through the media, and we didn't see him trying to shut down the X platform or the West Australia, any of these newspapers or anything. He took it like a man. He did something naughty. He went and did drugs. You know what I mean? Something that I'm sure a lot of the politicians out there are very used to, and a lot of the media representatives. I've heard that they love a bit of the old nose candy. In fact, I've heard on such programs such as The Block that frequent cocaine usage is basically par for the course. Not by Scott Cam, of course. He's tried to put an end to this whole thing, but the constant cocaine use actually on the set and behind the scenes is that's how our media system works. So this media system of old that Jackie Lambie wishes to elevate is basically just a large cocaine party. Yeah? And unlike the Australian hockey ruse player who sits there and takes his medicine by the media and says, yes, I did wrong, I shouldn't have been on the fucking blow, I should have been practicing my fucking flicks. We don't see him suing people and carrying on such as ray gun. And I think this female example of totalitarian control and expectation that they can use the media, use the police, use the court systems, use our government as their own little like Barbie playhouse has got to get a little bit of a haircut, a little bit of a trim down at the old barber, and we've got to get new women into these things, and archaic examples such as Miss Lambie need to be removed to free up the space to let vibrant, young, adaptive women into those spaces that are ready to take up the challenge of this new landscape, of an intertwined digital and then legacy media like relationship that works to better serve Australians as a whole. And so first of all, I've got to clear my name. I've got to go all the way back and dispute the original violence restraining order that used false information to be claimed. And then I think we can all just kind of, once that's gone, then the breaches are not really relevant, are they? Because the breaches don't exist. The fact that the breaches used cutting edge, newly implanted legislation to be even considered as a breach just makes the whole thing very embarrassing to the West Australian government. So I assume that all of these charges will be quashed and that my clean record will be restored. And this will be the first step that I need to do in order to run for a position as a senator, either in Western Australia or in Tasmania. I don't know whether I can do both. Maybe I can do both. I'd quite like to do both, and that would, or maybe I can do in some capacity, some type of thing for both regions to connect to the two little lost sheep of the federal system, Tasmania and Western Australia. And we can clearly see by my example that we're pulling our weight above and beyond what these lazy, entitled, currently serving politicians are doing. I've had to explore and research and delve into the depths of a very large, very intimidating new world of the internet world to really get a sure footing, to get a really good lay of the land, to understand the complexity that we're going to be facing in the future. And this let's all just turn it off, let's pull the plug out because I don't want to get in trouble. That example by a woman in charge is going to lead to some catastrophic things going on in our communities. I myself have been threatened or actually exposed to countless violence in my life that may have been acted upon, may have been inflicted on me by men, but a lot of time standing in the background is a woman that is provoking this violence from the men, trying to appease her kind of sinful instinct to be fought over, almost like Helen of Troy. This is the Helen of Troy effect. And this is being, if we've got provocateurs in party dresses out there, you know, creating these ripples within the very fragile psyches of young men, and then being, you know, completely ignored by our judicial system, completely ignored by our societal response, then this should be something that we work on, because a lot of times you'll find that there is usually one provocateur and that can create a myriad of on-flow effects from just one disruptive person. That can be male or female, but I think female provocateurs of violence are being ignored. And I believe that's what Mrs. Lambie is trying to do. She's trying to provoke violence in the Australian people and to provoke division out of a self-interested and self-preservative response from herself. She's trying, there's bad stuff that people don't want to find out, and if they find out about Mrs. Lambie, they're going to find it on X, because I don't know what type of control she's gotten used to over our legacy media or over our media, but she does not, in fact, have that control over Mr. Musk, and that's what she does not like. I myself, coming out of the pit of social ostracism and the pit of misinformation that has been inflicted upon me and my reputation, I am very well prepared to face all landscapes equally. And my shoulders have become very strong, both from the manual labour I've done for almost 2 decades and from the carrying the weight of being the scapegoat for a bunch of alcoholic, drug-addicted, bludging, bloody no-hoping characters in my own family. So, yeah, it just upsets me to see Tasmania embarrassed. Despite my father leaving there when he was 17 or 18, he never didn't consider himself a Tasmanian. And it actually upsets me that he lived to 85 and never felt the confidence to return there, because of just terrible things enacted on him by West Australian women. Now, we either, in this women's equality movement, we either have equality or we don't. And equality, as we've seen by Sam Kerr being on trial against racial whatever it was, by calling a policeman a white dog or whatever it was. That's equality. Yeah? This hiding and running to daddy to get Elon Musk turned off because you participated in promotion of a harmful medical scam is not the example that I want set to my daughter, who would also be considered of Tasmanian descent and carries the name of a family that's been Tasmanian for over 180 years. So I'm just a bit tired of these women that have put themselves in these positions and then are not willing to take the medicine of the truth. Yes, the truth is always safe and it's always effective, unlike experimental pharmaceuticals. And so we'll find that my life story basically is a war against pharmaceuticals, and the tool I use is the truth.